And welcome into the Four Verticals Podcast, episode 159 for this January 27th, 2026. High top a frosted over Jacksonville, Florida. And it won't be the last day we see that, or last time we use that term. It'll be the same thing. Basically, the entire week, really. Miserable, cold weather here in Jacksonville, northeastern Florida, southeastern Georgia. But as per usual, loaded show today. College football playoff updates. Format, not necessarily major changes in terms of number of teams, but we are getting some updates on what it'll look like for this year. Pete Golding and Dabo Swinney going at it against each other. That's been happening over the past 72 plus hours. Transfer portal updates, revisiting spicy predictions, a lot of things happening. If you are new here to the show, welcome in. We do college football all year round. This is what the show mainly is. We dive into some other like pop culture stuff, Buccaneers news, but of course that is all usually, or at least as of now, been moved over to the Four Verticals extra pods. Okay, the extra pods which come out usually once a week. We'll probably do one this week at some point. Probably not tomorrow because tomorrow's my birthday, so today's my today's birthday eve for me. But yeah, so we have the Four Verticals extra pod. That is again where you get most of your like Star Wars news, Marvel news, and Buccaneers stuff, especially around this time of the year. That's where you get most of that stuff on the extra pod. This is all strictly college ball. Okay, college ball all year round. We take no time off during the spring and summer, even when there's no games going on. A lot of things to discuss and cover. And today is certainly not one of those days where there's not a whole lot to talk about. There is a lot to talk about. There is a lot of things to discuss. So, again, if you are new here, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Okay, it's free. Nothing happens to you. Doesn't sign you up for anything. We don't come to your house and force you to sign a form or anything like that. This show is completely free of charge. There is that. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram, Instagram. Those links should be in the description or the channel info on YouTube. So be somewhere like down there, I guess. Click down there and you'll get all the links to our social media channels, other social platforms. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast feed on Spotify. Again, the Four Verticals Extra Pod is a podcast only, Spotify only product there. So just be aware of that. But anyway, so that being down here, let's get into the actual show. Again, a very chilly Jacksonville, Florida. Pretty cold. Temperatures in the 30s right now. Not typically what we see down here on this time of year, but hey, that's fine. Warm and safe in here in the studio. By the way, too, did the show a bit earlier today. A bit of a change up, but yeah, kind of this is how it's going to be the rest of the week for us in northeastern Florida, southeastern Georgia, and for most of the country. This is how it's going to be like for the foreseeable future, looks like, for the next 7 days or so. But anyway, enough of the weather. It's into the actual show. College football playoff. It's been 12 teams in the last couple of years. There's been some minor changes over the years, right? Like, for example, this year, the formatting in terms of who gets the highest 4 seeds, that changed to just the highest ranked teams. So that was changed over from the first year. Of course, there's been a lot of discussions about will the college football playoff expand, because there was the possibility that this past season was the last year to 12 team and we're going to go to like a 16 or 24 teamer. Well, it turns out this is staying at 12, thankfully, but it doesn't mean there won't be any changes. There will be some changes here. The big one, there's some other small ones like, Notre Dame being included regardless. If they're ranked in the top 12 of the rankings they'll be in. We know that for a while. But the biggest change, in my opinion, is this, that all P4 conferences, right, so the ACC, SEC, Big 10, Big 12, will be given auto bids. So those conference championship winners, okay, so if you're holding your conference championship title, you will be given an auto bid, regardless of what your record is. So, for example, this year, if it happened this year, these new rules, Duke would have been in the college football playoff at 9-4, and not James Madison more than likely. So that is a pretty drastic change from what we got this past season. So that is a new change there. Now, there's some ways you can look at this. There's the good part of it, and there's the bad part of it. We'll get into some of those. I guess we'll get into the good thing first. We'll get into, I guess, the consequences of this, if you will. Pretty much. Now, the thing that should be noted here in terms of Well, I mean, I guess not necessarily a good versus bad thing, but just some things I guess, well, I was trying to say here, some things that I've noticed, I guess, people have said, and kind of different ways you can look at this. First thing you can probably point out here is that it should be noted that the issues of the 12-team playoff, this current version of the playoff, has nothing to do with the actual number of teams, right? It has nothing to do with the number of 12, okay? That's not the problem. The problem has been both this past season and the year before is how it's been formatted, right? So again, first year, it was the highest ranked conference champs, regardless of where you came from, right? Could be either the P4 or the G5. Doesn't matter where you were, you could get, you can get a bye, right? So that's why Boise State in 2024 got a bye because they were one of the highest ranked conference champs. They changed that last year to just the highest, the four teams that were ranked in the top four. They get first round byes regardless if they won the conference champion or not. So now last year, the issue of the college football playoff again was not with the playoff itself; it was with the ACC, right? And it was something outside the playoff committee's control. Obviously, they can't control that the ACC had their tiebreakers and the whole kerfuffle and whatnot. And of course, those are supposedly, according to the ACC themselves, that's being corrected. So, that is what it is. Now, as for the conference that should be the most upset by this is something I think a lot of folks have echoed, is that, at least have said over the past couple of days, is that the conference that should be upset about the playoff not changing is the SEC. And, of course, Commissioner Greg Sankey, of course, this is the reason why they should be mad about this, and we don't know if they actually are, but I would imagine they probably are mad, is that they did announce back last year that, of course, they're moving to 9 conference games. And that was in anticipation that the CFP would expand beyond 12. That's not the case. So now if you're Greg Sankey, then you're like, man, we could have easily just waited, right? We could have just waited another year to do all of this, adding an extra conference game and just waiting until they expanded if they knew this was going to happen. So if any conference should be mad, it should be them. And of course, it could be argued that, the SEC's voice isn't as loud as it has been before because of, the last few national champions have been from the Big Ten. So there is sort of that changing of power, if you will. Now, as for the other, I guess, not like necessarily a bad thing, but it is something that we'll have to get used to. Again, we'll see if they change this again because they could easily, change it after this year, right? That it is not impossible that people like me and some others are going to look at, okay, if the situation that happened this year happens again to where, it just so happens that, let's just say, I don't know, the Big 12, that one of their teams is like a 10-win team, they're in the conference champion. The opponent is like a 8-4 team, right? The 8-4 team wins the Big 12, they're in the playoffs. So just like from an aesthetic standpoint, yeah, it's kind of weird, but I think based on how most of these conferences have, again, because of no divisions and how they do their tiebreakers, they have avoided that, unlike the ACC. So hopefully, both the way everything's been changed out and organized, from an aesthetic standpoint, you won't be seeing any more, or you will not see a 8-4, 9-4 team in the college football playoff. And also, the other sort of caveat, not caveat, but just say consequence. There you go. Consequence of these changes is this means the G5. And I don't know how big of a deal this is, but it does sort of kind of makes it apparent that the G5 getting more than 2 teams in is pretty much done. You're going to get one in for sure. You're going to get one in, but I'm pretty confident now in saying that the G5 getting 2 teams in like this past year, it ain't happening anymore. So, in a way, I guess sort of those the results from this past playoff, right, with James Madison, Tulane, the whole safety issue thing, that probably played a role here. I think some folks probably saw those results and were like, yeah, we're not doing that again now. Frankly, that shouldn't matter in general. I think the whole there's other reasons why you could go the route they're going, especially given, again, a lot of these issues are outside the playoff committee's control, most of the ACC tiebreaker stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I am glad they're not moving beyond 12 right now. I think I sort of, in a lot of ways, agree with Bud Elliott over at 247 on the Cover 3 podcast that let this thing simmer out, because for the most part, these past couple of years, especially this year, we have gotten very good games, right? Like maybe outside of the two G5 games, which, whatever, we have gotten for the most part very entertaining games. Even some of these blowouts, it's still been fun to watch and whatnot. We've had especially this year, the Ole Miss Miami game, Ole Miss Georgia game, instant classics. 10 out of 10 would recommend. OU Alabama. So yeah, I think them staying at 12, letting this thing simmer out, hopefully for the next few years, and then down the road we can discuss more expansion. Will be great, I think, and keeping this thing going as long as we can, because it really did look like you were going to go from 2 years to 12-team playoffs to all of a sudden, all right, we're going to 16 or 24 or 32. I really do hope that this sticks around for a while. Now, ideally for me, we will be going back down, right? But unfortunately, I used this metaphor before. It's sort of like when you're renovating a building, like a big, like tall 100-story building. You don't subtract floors, because that would be stupid. You can't do that. The only way you can't go down, you can only go up. So if there's more changes to the playoff in terms of the number of teams, you can only go up. So unfortunately for me, my dream scenario of going back down to where we were before ain't going to happen. That's not coming back anymore, unless unless this whole thing blows up and someone else takes some other organization were to take over the postseason. But if we can stay at 12 and stay there for as long as we can, I'll be fine with that. So that's just me. I think 12 has definitely been a very good sweet spot for the playoff, and I think it's worked out, I think, perfectly so far, even though some of the issues that have happened or that have occurred have been outside of or have been not necessarily to do with the actual number of teams. I think the number of teams is, I guess, fine. Again, it's not my ideal world, but I digress. Let's see here. Before we move on here, I want to make sure you guys can actually hear me on YouTube. I think the microphone should be on. It is, but always want to make sure the audio is working. Okay, it is on. So perfect. Again, as we are moving right along here, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Okay, we do college football here all year round. Just because the season's over with and the games are over, no more games being played, national title is over with, does not mean that the shows stop. The shows are going to continue. We're not going anywhere. So you can rest assured of that. So again, that's why it's important to subscribe to the channel. Very important you guys do that. Dabo Swinney and Clemson. Of course, they've been in the news for other things in terms of how bad last season was and where the program is, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're not here to talk about Clemson going 7-6 last year, or was it 6 or 7 or 6-7? Anyway, we're talking about this whole Ole Miss Dabo Swinney stuff. So if you don't know what's been going on, if you're moving under a rock, and I know a lot of you maybe don't have power because of the winter storm. Let me catch up to speed here. Well, I guess we'll do the paper pop here. So the whole story is that Luke Forelli, not related to Tom Fornelli, different last name, sounds similar but not related. So Luca Forelli originally committed to he enrolled at Clemson, right? He goes to Clemson from Cal, so interconference ACC transfer. So he goes to Clemson, he rolls in classes. Everything seems like it's okay, but then it comes out late last week that no, he is not going to Clemson, and in fact, he's going to Ole Miss. So we've seen this happen before, right? With who was it? The quarterback who was at Kentucky. I think who was it? This is the Stephen Jelly, or it's on him. He was the quarterback at Syracuse last year. Either way, I believe it was one of these like Notre Dame quarterbacks who transferred out. I believe went to Nebraska, and then ultimately goes to Kentucky. So we've seen this before, right? This is nothing new. But what is different is that Dabo Swinney and Clemson's AD had a press conference on Friday. Ooh, the vaunted press conference, giving me chills or echoes, if you will, of the whole Nick Saban, Jimbo Fisher feud. So what Dabo said during his I'm not going to play the video or anything like that. I'm sure most of you have seen the footage already and whatnot. And just to give you a summary of what's happened, Dabo basically labeled the whole thing as a whole new level of tampering, highlighted what he sees as a broader, problem in college balls, transfers and enforcement of rules. Clemson reportedly filed a complaint to the NCAA and has also informed The ACC conference, as you would probably assume. Supposedly the ACC is investigating it, this whole tampering thing, allegations, and they will supposedly do an investigation. That's kind of what's out there. Now, I definitely have some thoughts on this. Clearly, I have some thoughts on this. It is clear, and one thing can be a lot of things being said here, but what can definitely be said here is that tampering is a thing. There's no doubt tampering is a thing. It's not official, but it is a thing. Now, what makes it unofficial is that a lot of coaches haven't spoken out about it, right? Like a couple years ago. So like before this whole Dabo thing, it's happened before, but it's very rare. But the last time we saw this notably happen was with, if I recall correctly, Pat Narduzzi at Pitt talking about Jordan Addison, who's playing for the Vikings now in the NFL, going from Pitt, right? Just, the year with Kenny Pickett, they went to the ACC championship game. I think they won it. I think, yeah. So they won the ACC championship game. Great season for Pitt and Pat Narduzzi. So the year after, Jordan Addison goes to USC with Caleb Williams. That was kind of like a package deal. That's when Lincoln Riley was hired at USC at the time. And back then, Pat Narduzzi previously came out and said, look, there's tampering going on. This needs to stop. And a lot of folks gave him credit. And I don't know, of course, didn't have a show back then, but I agreed. Yeah, good for him for speaking out and being the only one to really speak out and say, hey, there's stuff going on, and, I'm not happy with it. Something needs to be done. Ultimately, nothing was done because, of course, the NCAA has really no power, yada, yada, yada. So this is not the first time this has happened before, to where a high-profile coach, and it's ironic, too, it's in the ACC, again, that has called out another program for stealing a player and doing tampering and stuff like that. Now, so I listened to the guys on Curve 3 yesterday, Bud, Chip Patterson, Danny Cannell, and all of them at 247. Now, there's certainly a lot of things that I disagree with and agree with them, but one of the things I do agree with, especially with Bud, Bud Elliott, who is, of course, one of their ACC guys, is also, of course, Florida State alum. But what Bud said yesterday, I know a lot of folks kind of were like, seriously, dude? I understand that definitely it's a interesting choice to go down that road the way that Bud went down, but it kind of makes sense, though, if you really kind of do, you've played through your head. And look, I'll just tell you, initially I was kind of like, I don't know what Bud's really saying here. I kind of understand it, but I don't know. So, of course, throughout the last 12 hours or so after I listened to the episode, something I was like, you know what? You might be right. And what Bud said, he basically kind of said, look, could Dabo Swinney be lying here, right? Could Dabo potentially be getting more value out of the press conference than any investigation? After thinking about it, that's probably true, right? I think Dabo could very easily be lying here. And he could also be potentially using this as a convenient smokescreen, right? Because right now, Clemson's transfer class, for those of you who are wondering, if you're curious about, hey, does Clemson have like a top 10 class? Because, that would make sense, right? You'd be upset. Their class, I hate to tell you this, outside the top 70. So we're getting close to like the hundreds. Now, I grant you, Clemson, yes, they have improved, over the last couple of years, because, a couple of years ago they weren't doing transfer stuff. Now here they are. But, yeah, I think this definitely is, or could very well be, a distraction or a smokescreen from Clemson's transfer class being kind of bleh. So, yeah, I have no doubt that what Bud said yesterday on Curve 3, that could be a possibility. It definitely is. It could be the sense that Dabo is lying and saying, hey, yes, we know our transfer class is bad, but oh, look, Ole Miss is still one of our players. So, yeah, it could very well be a convenient smokescreen. Don't blame him for doing it, because I'll be doing it too, right? If I was him, knowing that my, transfer class is shitty, right, in the top 70, nowhere near the top 25, yeah, I'll be like, man behind the curtain, don't pay attention to this, pay attention to that. This whole, kerfuffle and whatnot with Pete Golding and Ole Miss. So, yeah, seems kind of shady. Yeah, it seems kind of convenient that, it's a little convenient smooth screen, to kind of get people distracted from, oh, man, Clemson's class is so bad to you. Oh, poor Clemson. Oh, woe is me. So, yeah, I kind of do agree with Bud a little bit that this could be Dabo lying and a nice convenient smooth screen. Kind of strange how, or convenient that this is taking place while your class is kind of blip. Now, as for Pete Golding and Ole Miss, one thing I did have about this, or one opinion I had, or not opinion, just more of like a open-ended question. There we go. Is that could this be a symptom of him being a first-time coach? Because look, do I believe there was some tampering going on here? Yeah, I think there was. Is it like that big of a deal? I don't think so. No, I mean, if really being real, I mean, if the NCAA was really going to police this, they would have known, right? The NCAA is not. I mean, yes, they're powerless, but they're also not stupid, right? A lot same thing with all these programs, and I think to a certain extent, this happening again, if our, well, say our, me and Bud Elliott's belief are true, that this is a whole smokescreen and convenient, distraction from Clemson's class being terrible, that this will not be reported. And it can also be said that this is unfortunately a symptom, if this is true, and another thing that Bud brought up too is that we don't necessarily have the evidence. Yes, Clemson and I believe, Clemson's AD and Dabo have supposedly said, I'm trying to remember, that they have like text messages and evidence, and like the fact that the kid was in class and whatnot, which is probably true, but that's not been made public yet. So that is kind of we'll see. Could be real, could not. Now again, what I was trying to say here is that this could very well so, again, if this is real or actually legit, that this is a symptom of Pete Golding being a first-time head coach, right? He's first time on the job. If you're not fully experienced yet, a lot of sloppiness. It's going to happen, but at least that could be, at least if I were an Ole Miss fan, that's what I'd be saying. Be like saying, hey, look, it's just him being a first-time head coach. It's going to be sloppy. Go look at Jeremy Pruitt at Tennessee, right? He's a first-time head coach. Things are sloppy with their recruiting stuff. So either way, it's a gross situation. I would much rather this not be in college football. But again, a lot of things can be true at once. One, again, could Dabo Swinney be lying here? Could this be a convenient smokescreen for how bad their transfer portal class is? Absolutely, yes. I think that is possible. It could also be possible, too, that this is just a symptom of Pete Golding being a first-time head coach. And it's, it's a little sloppy and whatnot, and wasn't done necessarily in a way that would get you caught. Now, as for the NCAA, and will they actually do something with this? I don't know. I mean, NCAA, and to me, is really just a four-letter word. Hasn't meaning anymore. Kind of clear to you based on some of the court cases they've lost. It just kind of would be reasonable to assume that this will probably not lead anywhere, at least anywhere major, like no allegations. Yeah, sure, probably get a fine from Ole Miss and pay out some money, but I don't think anything major is going to come out of this. Sort of in a lot of ways kind of feels like theater, kind of like in the political world, it's like political theater. But yeah, I mean, look, a lot of things be true here. Again, Dabo Swinney could easily be lying here, and this could be a convenient smokescreen. And also, this could just be Pete Golding being a first-time head coach. And he unfortunately made a couple of sloppy. This whole transfer, under the table deal was done sloppily, and they got caught. So yeah, the whole Dabo Swinney Clemson thing versus Ole Miss, very fascinating to watch. Again, this is something to actually point out. I'm not a legal either. I didn't go to my alma mater, UNF, to get a law degree. I got a public relations degree. So now I do have a fundamental understanding of like the law and ethics of communication. I just don't. I'm not a lawyer. Okay, I didn't go to law school or anything like that. So that's outside my wheelhouse. But what is in my wheelhouse is, of course, college football. And of course, we do this show twice a week. Of course, we'll have our show live right now on YouTube, and this will be posted on Spotify later. And of course, we'll have our show on Thursday as usual. So again, subscribe. Very much so important for you guys to do that. Of course, it's the time of the year where our shows aren't going to be as long as they usually are. We'll tending a little bit more shorter, which is fine. We're still doing shows, but we're not necessarily like hour-long, coverage and whatnot. But, we still have shows, and, we'll still be here covering a lot of stuff. So, again, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the streams videos when we do them. Helps us out. Again, we're currently at 11 subscribers. We need, obviously, to get more eventually. But, yeah, again, that's what our show is. All college football all year round. Of course, we have the 4 Verticals Extra Pod that covers the other topics we do on this show, like Star Wars news, Marvel news, Buccaneer stuff. That'll be covered over there in our sort of like Q&A mailbag type thing. So we'll have one of those at some point this week. And there's a reminder there. Transfer portal, not much to update here. Still a lot of big names out there, probably. But the big one out there that has been in the news for a long, long time is, of course, Darrian Mensah, right? Originally commits to, or at least was committed to staying to Duke. Posts a whole video and stuff saying, hey, I'm, basically saying I'm staying at Duke, yada, yada, yada. I'm loyal to the school and whatnot. Okay, cool. Well, then it turns out, Miami, who just played a national championship game, needs a quarterback, right? Because Carson Beck's out of eligibility. He's, I believe, the senior. So he is moving on to either trying out the pros or going somewhere other than, or going pro in something other than football. So they need a quarterback because Miami has not done the quarterback recruiting out of high school at all well. It's been pretty bad, at least in terms of the star ratings. And look, could any of the guys step up if they need to? They could, but I'll be honest with you, based on what I've been hearing, a lot of the kids they've recruited out of high school have been kind of, wouldn't really necessarily be starters. So they need talent at quarterback. They just don't have it right now. So, of course, there are rumors about, who they're going to get. Folks are thinking, with several people, originally Sam Levitt, he ultimately goes to LSU. Then it turns out, maybe they'll go after guys who are not in the portal yet. Now, initially, people were speculating about C.J. Bailey at NC State because he's a Miami native. So, I think a lot of those folks on that staff there in Coral Gables would at least be aware of him. And he's NC State. Now, he originally committed to stay in NC State. So people are thinking, hey, could he potentially, make an announcement saying, hey, I'm going to the portal, testing my waters, but, yada, yada, yada. Turns out that was the wrong school in North Carolina because it turns out Duke is the place that we should be looking at. So Darrian Mensah and them have been in a legal battle, him and Duke, over the past week or so. Been ongoing. We haven't talked about it a whole lot because it's been a whole lot of nothing for the most part. Just been a whole bunch of, again, lawyer talk and whatnot. So essentially, it's people like me and others who don't have a law degree are kind of yeah, we'll wait this thing out, see what happens, and we'll talk about it. Well, it turns out they have settled their case. Duke and Darrian Mensah, so he is free to go. He is no longer a student athlete, quote unquote, student athlete, or no longer a part of the program. He is done. He is in the transfer portal database. He is available, and the current expectation is he is going to Miami. Would this be a good fit for Miami and Darrian Mensah? Yeah, I think so. His talent is pretty good. He put up good numbers last year, very quiet in terms of getting national notoriety. Now, he was making waves last year when he went from Tulane to Duke originally a little bit, but not so much in terms of his production. He put up some, if I recall, looking at his stats earlier, put up some pretty good numbers, if I recall correctly. So he's a dual threat guy, fits the system a little bit differently than Carson Beck and a little bit different than even Cam Ward. Cam Ward's a dual threat guy too, but obviously way different than Carson Beck. Carson Beck's a traditional, I don't know how to describe more like a field general quarterback. Now, kind of in a sense, not a true dual threat, but he can run a little bit, but running is not his strong suit, clearly. But so yeah, Mensah coming in, him being paired of Shannon Dawson, and of course you still have decent talent there, especially at receiver. Bet this could work, right? I mean, heck, the ACC schedule just got released, and if I recall, if we go over to their schedule here for next year, I'm pretty sure it's been already put on publicly. I know it's out there. I just have to go find it. Let me see. Miami, this one on the fly research. Here we go. Here's their schedule. I had to go to Twitter and find it. It's not been posted anywhere else. Yeah, here we go. So, with Mensah coming in, right? Here's your schedule. And it's, I'll tell you off the bat right now, it's pretty workable. There are some games here you can look at early right now that would be interesting. So on the road at Stanford, you should be favored there. FAMU, you should be favored, obviously. Wake Forest should be favored. Central Michigan, you should be favored. Clemson, small favorite, maybe small, 2.5 point favorite, maybe on the road. Florida State should be a favorite there. Pitt, same thing. North Carolina, same thing. Notre Dame, probably the first game of the year you're going to be a dog again, I think. Now, the interesting two games here are the ones I am more fascinated by. First one, Duke. Pure cinema. I don't know which day this is going to be taking place on. I'm assuming it's on a Saturday based on the dates here. I will be watching that game. Duke, playing against its former quarterback. He ends up going to Miami, which it's not official yet, but it is kind of obvious where he's going to go, right? I like Tennessee, probably not. Tennessee's probably going to go with in-house, which, all right. But in terms of where Mensah's going, yeah, it's pretty much locked in to be Miami. So him versus Duke, more than likely on November 14th. I know it's a long time from now, but that, it's cold right now here in Jacksonville, but my hands are making me warmed up here. I am, woo. That is, it could be absolute sim up there. And it's at home, too. So, fortunately, it's not an away game, but whatever. Then the other game that there is some interest here is Virginia Tech. Yeah, Virginia Tech, James Franklin. Big first one of his first big games there. So how about that? Going down to Coral Gables, or going down to Miami. Not Coral Gables actually, but Miami. And then of course in the season with Boston College. So besides the game against Notre Dame, you should be favored in all those games. Like there is a possibility here where Miami could go 11-1, 10-2 at worst, kind of like this year. Yes, I will acknowledge that they've lost a lot of talent. All those guys are going to the NFL, particularly on line of scrimmage. So we'll see about them. Of course, we'll do our traditional record projections and whatnot down the road. Once we get to late, we'll be down the road towards May. So, yeah, transfer portal still going around. Again, not the biggest fan of the topic of the transfer portal. It's not something really I personally like talking about, but we have to acknowledge it's out there. But good for Darrian Mensah, good for Duke to not make this make this whole thing ugly. And again, it looks like he is going to Miami for all intents and purposes, unless someone else comes in at the 11th hour, like a Tennessee for some reason. But it definitely looks like he will be going down to Coral Gables. Before we move on to our last segment here, we need some water real quick, and we'll move on. Again, thank you guys so much for tuning into the show. Again, because as we're kind of at this point in the show, apologies for last week. I know I was not feeling too. I don't know what it was. It was kind of weird. Like my stomach was hurting. I'm not sure what was going on. I feel way better now. I'm back to normal, so I don't know what the hell that was. It could have been anything, food poisoning, whatever. I don't know. It could have been a lot of things, but whatever it was, it's gone now. So fingers crossed that don't have to deal with that again. But Mel's. I would just say this: if we didn't have a show, or last week, if we had a show this time last week, I would have had to cancel it. Like there was no way I would be able to do the show last week. I was in pretty bad shape, but I don't know. I don't know what it was, but I feel better now. But Thursday though, that was a chore to get through. I handled it, but probably wasn't our best show. This show, as you can tell, way better energy and whatnot. But again, thank you guys so much for tuning into the show. If you're listening to this live or on the replay or on Spotify, again, we appreciate it here. Again, we are not necessarily the best show. We are one of the newer shows out there, but we're not the best college football show out there. But we are one of the newer ones. We've only been around for about to be 2 years now. How about that? Revisiting Spicy Productions. We've been doing this for the past couple of weeks now. We'll continue doing this, and we'll start doing these again probably once we're done through these, so probably pretty soon. Probably the target date to get the new ones in around April, probably. So we'll start doing them April, March. We'll start doing some spicy predictions. But so we've been revisiting these. So how this works is that we'll just gotta go for the ones that we rated wrong or we got right. So based on our rating. So for example, if we've labeled something as a mild, which if you need to refresh on our scale here for spicy predictions, it's mild means it could happen. Warm means it maybe could happen. Hot, slightly unlikely it will happen, and then spicy is unlikely. Meaning that we don't believe it will happen, that prediction. So, for example, we say something happens, like, for example, the first one has to do with the team making the playoffs. So now if we say it's hot and they make it, then we got that one wrong, and then vice versa. So that's how it works. So, first one here. Think of the first one. Missouri makes it to the playoff. That was the one of the predictions we got last year. I put this one in the mild category, meaning I just didn't I just didn't think it could happen, and we got that one wrong. We were wrong on that. I accidentally put an NY on there, not. Let's wasn't supposed to be there. But anyway, so yeah, we put that in the mild category. That was wrong. We got that totally wrong. We fought based on Missouri's schedule last year. Again, it was pretty workable, right? I mean, there's a reason why I think folks were agreeing with that they could be in the playoff. I mean, go back to their schedule. Let me just look it up here. Missouri football. I mean, if I recall, it was a very workable schedule. I mean, I think at one point they were not, they haven't even left Columbia, Missouri. Yeah, there was like a whole period where they were just at home for like 90% of the year. So yeah, so their schedule last year, and go back to it. So it was home versus an FCS team, home versus Kansas in the border war, home versus Louisiana, home versus South Carolina, home versus UMass, home versus Alabama. Their first road trip was all the way in October. So it was a full month where they're at home. They go to Auburn, and of course they win that game. Then the rest of the schedule, Vanderbilt they lose, and of course they lose to Bama a few weeks before that. Lost to Vanderbilt, lost to Texas A&M. They played at Mississippi State, beat them, lost to OU, beat Arkansas. So yeah, they finished 8-4 and ended up going 8-5. So and they lost to Virginia here in Jacksonville in the Gator Bowl. So yeah, I mean, like the schedule was there, right? I mean, based on the fact that they had a good schedule, hey, SEC sticker on their helmet. Yeah, a 10-2 SEC team with that schedule had a pretty to be in, right? No doubt. But they didn't, and they missed a big opportunity because they probably could have been. They had a good, really good. I think they had a really good team. It just kind of blows my mind how they went the way they did. Because I thought that they could have easily had a really good year. I mean, they had the transfer from ULM, Hardy, the running back, comes in, had a great season, very underrated, or not. Well, yeah, I guess both underrated and also underappreciated. You don't really talked about it as much. I mean, he was fantastic for them, Mark Hardy, but yeah, didn't make it to the playoffs. I thought it could have happened. So that one's a no for us. We got it on wrong. Next one, Arch Manning does not live up to the hype. Put that in the high category, which means again, if we go to our scale, slightly unlikely. You're wrong on that. No, he did not live up to the hype. So we were wrong on that in terms of saying that was that prediction was not going to happen. So it did happen. He did not live up to the hype. Now, great you. The hype for Arch Manning last year, the hype for him, it was more or less, hey, he was going to win the Heisman. He was, going to do all these terrific things and whatnot. It just didn't happen. I mean, you can look at the way the season started for Texas. It started off really slow. They had the game against Ohio State. Even the games after, it just didn't look very good, very sloppy. Then you lose to Florida. Then things started to pick up a little bit in the middle of the year. So you beat OU, you beat Vanderbilt. Of course, you lose to Georgia. No real shame in that. But then they finished the season strong by beating Michigan in their bowl game. So we'll see. I mean, I guess it is interesting that you have all these expectations for a player, right? We've seen this in the past for a lot of guys, right? Especially for players who were the vaunted preseason Heisman favorite, if you will, and then they end up not doing very much. Like, classic example. Who was it? Cody Kessler, or whomever in 2012 with that Lane Kiffin USC team that were preseason number one. Of course, Auburn with Jeremy Johnson. So we've had guys before who were preseason Heisman favorites and not really materializing. It's not that Arch Manning didn't have a bad year. He just didn't live up to the hype. So he did fine, and his numbers, I think, once you look at his total numbers, actually, we'll look these up actually because I am curious what his total numbers were after the season. Because I don't think they were probably that bad. I would imagine, I'm assuming, I haven't looked at these at all, that they probably weren't as bad as we thought based on how the season went. So, yeah, I mean, 26 touchdowns, only 7 picks. That's not bad. Frankly, a lot of teams would take that. His rushing numbers were pretty good, 10 rushing touchdowns. And a receiving touchdown. So it wasn't his overall stats were not bad. They were kind of good. I mean, yeah, great. You want more touchdowns, but those aren't bad numbers. So it's not that he didn't play. It's not that he played horribly, like he played like absolute crap. No, he played fine. He didn't necessarily have the seasons where he was putting up numbers like 45 touchdowns and like 4 picks. Like he didn't have that. So yeah, I mean he didn't live up to the hype. Didn't have a bad year. So still, that's in the category. We're wrong on that. Next one here. Manner mistake here. Put another NY instead of just the single letter. Oklahoma State wins the Big 12. We put this in the high category, which, of course, if you need a reminder, slightly unlikely. Now, we got this right. So that was yes. Or excuse me, no, actually, no, we did not get that right. Yes. Yes, I caught myself confused there for a second. Yes, we got that one right. Now, the only reason why I didn't put this in the spicy category is that there was sort of this outside possibility is that, given all we were hearing about Oklahoma State, right, about how bad the team was being structured and, just how much talent was not there anymore, there was still this sense that it's Mike Gundy, right? He was the model of consistency in the Big 12 for such a long time outside of, OU and Texas, where there was some possibility that, hey, they could make a run here. They could surprise folks and maybe there was some weird way they could make some noise in the Big 12, given how open it was, at least at the time. But it just wasn't the case. Of course, they go 2-10, or I think actually 1-11. They lose to Tulsa, get blown out by Oregon to begin the year. Just a horrible year. Of course, now they have a new coaching staff coming in, and literally a new team. So we'll see what happens with them with the new head coach Eric Morris coming over from North Texas. But yeah, that one we were right about in the high category. But Oklahoma State won the Big 12. Oh man. Next one here. Speaking of conference champs, Georgia Tech wins the ACC. This was in the mild category, meaning that we thought this was going to happen. Didn't happen. Now, almost did happen, but they both their own undoing and also the ACC tiebreakers. It just didn't happen. Now they started out good. They started out undefeated. Remember, this team was like what 10-0 or something like that. They were like 9-0, undefeated, top 10 team in the country. Of course, then they lose to NC State. They ended up losing to who did they lose to? Pitt, I believe. Let me look up here. Georgia. I knew they lost to someone later in the year. I just don't remember who it was exactly. I know they lost to NC State. And of course, they lost to Georgia in the rivalry game. I don't recall what ended up actually happening. Let me see here. Yeah, they lost to Pitt at home. That's right. I remember watching that game. So, it didn't end the way you wanted it to. It was a very disappointing end. Again, they started out undefeated, right, to beat Clemson. We all thought that was a huge win. And of course, they survived Wake Forest. They survived a lot of games. Were kind of living on borrowed time. Then, of course, they ran out versus NC State on that fateful day in Raleigh, North Carolina, there in Carter Finley Stadium. But I mean, look, they were close. They could have easily been in. They finished the ACC regular season with 2 losses. So, and they were fourth in the standings. And yeah, if they got it correct, they would have still not been into the ACC championship game, but they would have fared a lot better. But anyway. This wasn't necessarily off the beaten path here. I mean, this is a good team. They just, unfortunately, for a team like them who was not used to going out to, at least being used to being in that stratosphere, right? The stratosphere of the playoff talk, it just didn't happen. So they were not used to it either. I got a alert here. My film wasn't cultural related. It is NFL Bills. Joe Brady, not surprised there. That was going to happen. Anyway, that's NFL. That's not college football. But Georgia Tech, that one we were wrong on. I think our thinking was right. Just the result just didn't happen in terms of how we're rating for that. Next one here, Avery Johnson regresses. We put this in the warm category, right? You lose Colin Klein, new system coming in, 2 years in a row. It just something that we were wondering, could he regress? Because he had such a good year the first year. It's always tough to, keep that consistent. Kind of happened, right? He kind of regressed a little bit this year, and he's back again, so we'll see, another year or another season with a new play caller, but it's one he's used to with Colin Klein being the new head coach there at Kansas State. For those who don't remember, yes, Chris Klieman retired, so he is gone, and now they've brought in the legendary Colin Klein, so he is there as head coach now. So yeah, that one, if Avery Johnson got that one correct, we thought that was certainly a possibility that he could regress a little bit. So we were kind of right on that. Next one here, sticking to the Big 12, Scott Frost has success in his first year. We thought that was pretty insane to think. We gave that one the hot category, and we were correct. I think they went 5-7, I believe. Now, grant you, it was a pretty decent rebuilding job there after what happened with Gus Malzahn. They just needed to, swipe the thing down, clear the deck, if you will, just rebuild entirely. So, it just wasn't realistic to expect them to have a good year. Obviously, they did not. Interesting to see, though, again, like I mentioned with Scott Frost this time last year. It'll be interesting to see going into, especially this year, what lessons has he learned from the whole Nebraska debacle, and what he can he apply them to him being back at Central Florida. Just something to think about there going to next year. Again, much like this year, what things has he learned and what will he be applying going forward? But yeah, UCF wasn't. I mean, heck, their first game of the year was like a close win over Jacksonville State, and then finally, this last prediction here: Oregon wins less than 10 games this year. You put this one in the hot category. Now, the only reason why we didn't put it in the spicy category is that because of the schedule they had, kind of a sneaky tough schedule, and also a lot of veteran players have been leaving. It was the first time you're really going to be seeing the dangling recruits coming in. You'd be largely relying on the transfer portal for a lot of these big-time players. But given how much faith we have in Dane Lanning and how much faith we had in Dante Morgan last year, and of course he's back for this coming up season, at least he's back on the team, we did not think that was going to happen. Then winning less than 10 games, we were correct. They made it to the playoff and actually won a playoff game. So how about our playoff game and change? They won 2 of them, got to the semifinals. So yeah, we were right about that. That was in the hot category. That prediction was very much so not one we did not think was going to happen. So how about that? And that's it for the show. How about that? Under an hour again. A little more longer, though, than we've had been lately. So here's sort of the plan. Here's about the paper. Again, for Verticals Extra Pod, maybe tomorrow we'll see, but it's my birthday, so I have the constitutional right, if you will, to potentially move it to Friday like we did last week. So just keep an eye on that. Of course, we'll have the show normally on Thursday as per usual. Probably the same thing in the morning. Yeah, so that's it for the show. So again, until Thursday, again, we'll see about tomorrow of the Extra Pod. Again, it's my birthday. I don't know if I necessarily want to be doing a show tomorrow, but we might. Who knows? I might just screw around and do one. Who knows? Maybe we'll do one tonight. You never know. Just keep an eye on your podcast feed there on Spotify. A link should be somewhere down in the description down there. Or not description, but channel description. Channel info. But yeah, so again, until Thursday, take care. We'll enjoy the rest of your Tuesday and your Wednesday. And until Thursday, we'll see you guys on the next stream.